Star Wars, the expanded universe. A universe so vast that has over 17,000 characters from various different eras, from Dawn of the Jedi to the Old Republic, to the prequels all the way to the Legacy era. This is the tale of over 17,000 characters throughout the Star Wars universe. This is our first step to a much larger world that exists in the Star Wars universe. This is the story beyond the movies. This is the story of the Star Wars expanded universe. A universe loved by many. A universe that helped shape what this franchise is today. This is their story.
Hello everyone, Darsonovia here. This is my re-recording of my review. So if you see the same video, it's because it won't play past a certain point, and I refuse to have a video that doesn't play. So, this is the episode 1 novelization written by Troy Brooks. Back when this was released, it had multiple covers. I have the Anakin Skywalker cover. Of course, I have this in paperback as well, which comes with a little short story. But I love hardcovers, and I read it in hardcover. Now, how is this? Well, for those who have never read the novelizations, some of you may not see a reason to, because some of you may think, oh, it's just the same as the movie. Well, unlike the original trilogy, the prequels add enough content in the novelizations, the episode 1 I'm primarily talking about here, that I feel like it helps enrich the experience. I mean, even if you don't like the movie, episode 1, The Phantom Menace, I suggest you give it another shot. If you don't want to watch the movie, I suggest you read the novel, which I think the novel is far better than the movie. You don't have to deal with some of the awkward dialogue that you hear in there. Plus, you could imagine the voices in your head. You don't have to imagine Jake Lloyd or all those other actors if you don't want to. And I feel like this does a better job of setting up the characters than the movie does. And the biggest problem I have with The Phantom Menace, as much as I love the movie, it did not start off with Anakin Skywalker. It started off with characters no one was familiar with until you saw Obi-Wan take off his hood for the first time. I felt like it should have started with Anakin, because Anakin is the father of Luke, and he's the one that will eventually become Darth Vader. You don't see Anakin until like a quarter way through the movie. Well, in the novelization, it starts off with Anakin and his pod race. You see what Anakin's life was like before he meets Qui-Gon. You also see, some of his friends that he's friends with, because you get to see what kind of person that Anakin was prior to leaving Tatooine. I feel like the novel does a better job at showcasing the innocence of a young Anakin. Of course, the thing with Anakin and Padme, I felt like the way it was handled was better in here than it is in the film. Because I feel like Anakin, falling in love with Padme, I felt like was done better. Because if you just watch the movies, it does feel kind of sudden and out of nowhere and a little creepy in a way that Anakin would say such a thing. But if you read the novel, I think the way that the characters are written in here is much better than the movie. I just feel like you can actually feel for Anakin for what he's going through, what is going to happen to him. I feel like the feels that you have inside when you read the novelization, and that's the biggest strength about reading the novelization of the prequels over watching the movies. It's the same story, but it does enrich that story by adding the details, that the deleted scenes that weren't in the movie into the novel. There's maybe some minor contradictions with this and Jedi Apprentice, but this was published first. Not to mention, because you're reading a novel, you could hear the thoughts as you read it, what's going on in a character's mind. You get to basically read what Anakin is thinking in his head. So you get a general idea of who he is. Much better than you do in the movie. Much better. Now, this does do something significant. This introduces at least the rule of two, and the first time that Darth Bane, the founder of the rule of two, is mentioned. George Lucas just, talked to Troy Rooks and told him the entire story about the Sith and the history, and that was implemented in this book. The thing about the novelization of The Phantom Menace, it's not just like other movie novelizations out there, which translates, what's on screen into a novel. No, it's much more than that. I feel like it does a much better job than most novelizations do, if not all of them. I haven't read other novelizations of movies, but regarding Star Wars, of making the novel worth your time. Because you're one of those hardcore Star Wars fans and you want to know everything, but there are people that passed up the novelizations of the prequels, or the prequels in general, because they think it's the same as the movie. I believe not reading the novelizations, you're doing yourself a disservice, because it may have you look at the prequels in a different light. You don't have to like the movies, but I feel like the novelizations, lived up to the potential that the prequels had. And in my opinion, this is what the prequels should have been, at least episode 1. I can't recommend it enough, the novelization of The Phantom Menace. I give it a classic rating. I think it's really good, even if you're one of those people that read the new canon. I would still give it a shot anyway. I mean, yes, it's technically a Legends book, which I'll explain why it is. Lucasfilm's new policy in general, as long as the novelizations align with the movies, it's canon. If it's not in the movies, it isn't canon. So, which means the novelizations of all the movies, at least the first 6, I'm not going to really talk about the new canon really, are not canon. But that shouldn't stop you from reading the novelizations of the prequels, because I feel like you can look at those movies at a different light and realize the stories for the prequels are not bad. Even if you're one of those people that don't like the movies, it's just how they were directed. So when you're up for it and you want to read some Star Wars, or you want to revisit the prequels, but you don't want to watch the movies, read the novelizations. The beautiful thing about the human mind is we have our own imagination. You don't have to imagine Hayden Christensen or Jake Lloyd or whoever actors you don't like. You can imagine the way they look in your head. That's the beauty about reading. So I suggest you check this out. The episode 1 novelization is something I recommend for any Star Wars expanded universe fan to read, because I feel like passing this up because you don't like the prequels or you don't like the idea of reading novelizations of movies, I think you're doing yourself a huge disservice. This is Darcenovia, over and out. Have a nice day, and next time we talk about Star Wars, we're going to talk about a story that takes place at least 50 years into the future, Tatooine Ghost. Later, guys.